I'm 24 years old and I've never been in a relationship before. Whenever I say that to people, the reaction is always like really surprised and like thrown off guard. Like, especially when I say that to guys, like, it's crazy to come across somebody who's, seemingly attractive, seemingly somewhat normal, and to have never been in any sort of relationship before. And when I say nothing, y'all, I'm talking nothing. Like, not even a middle school boyfriend for 2 days. Like, it's giving nothing at all, okay? And all this I'm going to tie into my topic of why dating in your 20s is so hard. Hi, my name is Lisa. I make fashion, beauty, and lifestyle related content. And sometimes I like to chat. So if y'all are into all that, be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss those videos. But yeah, y'all, I think this is a topic that many people our age can relate to. If you clicked on this video, I'm assuming you're in your 20s as well. But if you're not, I welcome you to join the conversation because, I think it's relatable, period. Whether you're a man or a woman watching this, there are some problems with dating nowadays that I just feel like we need to talk about. So I'm going to talk about it. And let me just put this out here. It's not to say that I've never talked to guys before, I've never dealt with guys, or even have been in anything remotely serious. Like, I've experienced all of those things, but I've just never gotten to the point of a relationship status. And may I also add that if you're a woman who clicked on this video to hear me say men ain't shit, girl, this ain't that kind of video. Like, I'm moving in a more healed place with how I feel about love and just relationships in general. So this isn't gonna be that kind of video. So I'm so sorry in advance because we not gonna be bashing men, but we will be spinning some facts though. All of my dating experiences are very personal to me, and that where I grew up, the environment I grew up in, all play a role in why my dating life looks the way that it does and why I've had the sort of experiences or haven't had some of the experiences regarding relationships and love. So just keep that in mind. Y'all may not relate to it all entirely, but I hope that you can relate in some sort of way. To have no dating experience by the age of 24, like, it does sound kind of crazy. Like, it does. I'm not even gonna lie. But I can't help but to laugh a little bit because whenever I tell people this, and again, I'm going to emphasize, especially when I tell men this, it's always jumping to some sort of conclusion like, oh, you must be crazy. Oh, you must be difficult to deal with. You must be hard to impress. It's always something, and it just makes me laugh because it's really not as black and white as that. Yeah, those kind of conversations, those sort of reactions have really inspired this talk about why dating in your 20s is so hard. So let's get into it because I've broken this down into, I think, like 4 main points. And the first one I want to talk about is where you're meeting people. I think where you're meeting people plays a big role in what your dating life can look like at the time. For example, I went away for college. I lived on campus, and I will say that's the most active and lively that my dating life ever looked in my life. Like, I'm not even gonna cap, y'all. The dating pool was in constant rotation. But college is one of those places where you just are consistently meeting new people, and your social life is such a huge part of your college experience. So it really is no surprise that I had the sort of dating experiences that I had in college, and I'm using quotations because I use the term dating very, very lightly in college. If you know, you know, okay? But even still, I feel like dating in college is like very different. Like, it's a very like younger, more fun, less serious kind of dating. Although you can find your love of your life in college. Some people do. But like, generally for me, like, it was a very young kind of dating. Like, it was very unserious. And although I know that you can still be in your 20s for a portion of your college career, but for me, being in my 20s in college and being in my 20s in real life are completely two different things. Like, I can tell you that that girl was different, the way she dated was different. So now I think about where I am now. I'm 24 and I'm not in college. And you start to think about, how do you meet people now in real life outside of a school environment? And for somebody like me who works from home, I don't have any intentions on going back to school and living on campus. So that already starts to limit my options of meeting new people. And I guess there's always a way, like, there's dating apps and stuff, but I could never really get behind that, y'all. Like, it just isn't my vibe. I feel like with dating apps personally, like there's just this overarching theme that everybody's there for a reason, and I feel like sometimes it forces connections that aren't really there. And I'm just somebody who likes to meet people organically and naturally in real life. So the dating apps just aren't for me. So it's like now if you fit into those categories of working from home and not going to school and not liking dating apps, the only other way you're meeting people is if you literally put yourself out there to meet people. And I just so happen to like to go out. Like me and my girls, whenever we go out, we have a good time. But we do still live in Massachusetts. And if you aren't too familiar with Massachusetts, there's really only so much that you could do out here. Occasionally, like we'll go to parties and we'll go to clubs, but personally, I don't think I'm finding what I'm looking for in those kind of environments. Like, you know, that kind of environments, parties and clubs are known to be really lighthearted, really fun, really flirty. And, like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm still single, you know, I still have fun and flirt and, you know, live your best single life or whatever, sis, do you. But personally, for me, there's just no fulfillment in that for me anymore. Like, for me, like, I'm not really into the whole casual dating thing with multiple different partners. Like, personally, my mind just can't take it. Like, I've tried it, I've been there, but the way that my brain is set up, it don't work for me. Okay, so that's my reason for not being like that. But we need to understand that people have different versions of dating and how they like to date. And I think it's really important for you to, and when I say you, I mean like, you know, for yourself, to personally know how you like to date. And we'll talk about that a lot more later. I just want to lightly touch on that. But it brings me to my next point on what is your mindset. I think that this is such a huge thing. And you know, this one may hurt a couple feelings, but I feel like we have a lot of unhealed people trying to heal themselves with love, relationships, or just straight up attention. I also feel like a lot of us have a very romanticized version of what it means to be in a relationship without even having what it takes to be in a relationship. I can attest to all this because at one point I feel like both of those statements apply to me in some way, shape, or form. And it took some time for me to even acknowledge and recognize that within myself. Like, truthfully, it really took me being in a toxic situationship and mustering up the strength to leave a toxic situationship for me to realize, like, wait, there's a lot of work that I need to do within myself that I've never unpacked before. So it's time. And you know, realistically, you're never gonna fully be healed. You know what I'm saying? We're always healing from something. But I do think that there's a certain level of intention and accountability that you need to have when making yourself available for relationships or like entering the dating world, by having certain tough conversations with yourself, having certain uncomfortable conversations with yourself. And a lot of people are scared to do that. A lot of people don't even know how to approach doing that. So instead, it's easier to distract yourself with another situationship, with another fling, with another thing. Like, it really is no shade. I feel like everybody eventually comes to this, I guess, self-awareness in their own timing, because your 20s really are that time when you're still finding and discovering yourself. I think a lot of the time we like to say that it's our teenage years where we're finding ourselves, but nobody warned us about our 20s. Like, this is a different level of finding yourself. You know, when you're trying to find yourself while also dabbling in the dating world, I just feel like it personally is a little messy. For real, like, no communication skills, but we in consistent talking stages. Like, how that makes sense? That's all I'm saying, okay? Okay, my next point is definitely the biggest one. I think it's the most obvious one that we're all a little too familiar with. People are scared to have conversations. I don't even need to touch on this too much. Like, personally, this is the biggest one that I've noticed in all of my dating experiences. And even from what I've heard from my friends, like, people really just be scared to talk and say how they feel. And it's so insane at our big age that we can't tell somebody how we feel without being scared. Like, I get it because I'm literally talking to myself. Like, hello, I'm her. I'm who I'm talking about. But it really is crazy, and I feel like this is the culprit to a lot of failed situationships and a lot of failed relationships, just because people just don't have the communication skills or they don't want to. I feel like the main reasons why people are scared to have conversations are for the obvious reasons. People are scared to say how they feel or what they want out of fear that the person doesn't feel the same way, or they don't want to look stupid or pride or whatever it is. But whatever it is, it got us in a chokehold, and I want us to be released from these shackles. Like, we're way too old for this. Like, seriously. And truthfully, I feel like the lack of conversations lead to an overarching issue, which just ends up wasting time or causing unnecessary conflict. And that's all I need to say for that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think that's something we can all relate to. I won't touch on this too much, so let's move on to the next point. That you need to acknowledge how you want to date. Now, I know I mentioned this earlier. We're about to get back into it. I'm going to expand on exactly what I mean when I say that. So I think a lot of the times when people are entering the dating world, they're coming in with this sort of mindset of, oh, I'm dating to be in a relationship, or, oh, I'm just dating casually, I'm just trying to mess around. And I don't think it's always as black and white as that. So I started to think about what I wanted a little bit more in depth, like thinking about how often I want to see my partner and how often we want to communicate, and just thinking like super granular. And I really encourage y'all to think that way when approaching like dating situations or just dating in general, because I think this helps a lot to not think about it in such a vague sense of I want to be in a relationship or I don't want to be in a relationship, because what does that actually mean? What does that actually even look like? I think for everybody, even saying that, the build up to that looks different. Because I think when you think of it super granular on this kind of level, like, it helps you to not waste time, and it also helps you to notice the red flags early on of what's going to work and what's not going to work. Like, I'll be the first to tell y'all right now, like, I'm the biggest victim of going with the flow. Like, I've wasted so much time in my dating experiences just going with the flow. And actually, now I realize that there probably are healthy ways that you can go with the flow, but go with the flow with the understanding of knowing what you want. Go with the flow with the sense of boundaries. But before, it was just like aimlessly and mindlessly going with the flow until things just ultimately ended. But I do feel like that's something that's really common in our generation. Like, people use these really blanketed statements like, oh, I'm just chilling, or, oh, I'm just going with the flow, to hide the fact that they don't really know what they want. And I think the reasoning for that is one of two things. I think it's one, people are coming into situations without any sort of prior, like, understanding of what they want entering situationships. But I also think another part of it is people are trying to match each other's energy in talking stages and situationships. And that, to me, is just so mind-blowing. And I speak about that one from like a super personal experience, because I'm also a victim of doing that as well. And it's the ugliest thing in the world, because, girl, what do you actually want? Like, I think back to my college dating experiences where I would do this most often. And, you know, people would say all the time, oh, like, what's your status? Like, what are y'all? And it's like, oh, we're just chilling. We just going with the flow. Like, you hear that so much in college. And for me, whenever I said that, all that meant is I was matching the lead of the dude that I was talking to. If the guy wanted to move in a more serious direction, well, now I'm thinking more seriously. If he's giving me casual vibes, then shoot, I'm moving casually too. But the problem with that is that it actually takes away from putting yourself first in relationships, and instead it puts somebody else first. It puts their desires first. It puts their wants first. And it doesn't give you the ability to think if this is something that you actually want to do. And I just feel like that it's so common even outside of a college environment. Like, that is so common in our 20s for people to just be matching energy, when really that's not it. It's giving toxic, okay? And I rebuke. But that's actually all I had today. Those are the main points I wanted to touch on. I could talk about this for days, y'all. So if you want a part 2, let me know, or give this video a thumbs up. Also, let me know your thoughts on this video as well. If you could relate to anything that I said, definitely drop me a comment. But again, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Feels good. Yeah. It feels good. Yeah. It feels good.